I'm Kaylee Frost, Head of Clinical Support at Health Assured, and you're listening to Peace of Mind. Now today, I'm joined by my colleague Gideon. Gideon's one of our specialist support coordinators here at Health Assured. And whilst the title of this episode is Sports and Mental Health, Gideon comes with a wealth of knowledge, experience, life experiences. So actually, I won't do you justice, to be honest, Gideon. I'll let you explain why you're here in the capacity that you are at Health Assured, talking to me about sports and mental health.
Well, thank you. Thanks for having me first and foremost as well. But yeah, so essentially, I mean, the journey starts for me as a role model. I wanted to be a beacon of light for those who are going through traumatic events and distressful times. I know for myself, my journey begins with football.
Yeah.
Today, I'm working in a field where it's more psychologically based, more clinically based.
Field like that.
Exactly, that's right. So one thing remains the same, the field. But it's been a journey whereby I started football at Manchester City when I was in the academy. Yeah. And as time went on, didn't see things as me progressing at that club. It wasn't a matter of not having the talent, but a matter of not being the right fit for me. Yeah. And so I understood, took it on the chin and moved forward. Went to Newcastle, but within the time of being at Man City and Newcastle, there was two things that kind of didn't sit well with me, which was with the length of time I took to be at Man City for 5 years or so. Within 2 minutes, the conversations had that's it, you're done. Now, the psychological impact that it can have on someone is ridiculous. Yeah. I think that kind of impact that it has on a person can stay with you for a long time. And the reason that I'm here today is because I've recognized that it can have a toll. And we'll go into it a bit later on, but the journey has evolved, and I've evolved as well in my cognition of what is right for me and what I'm able to do has also evolved. So it's been a really nice journey so far.
Brilliant. And you joined Health Assured, when was it?
January the 8th.
Was it January? I feel like it's been so much longer than that, Gideon.
It feels like home now.
You're very much woven into the fabric of Health Assured, and it feels like there was a hole on the specialist support team for quite some time, and you just came in like duck to water. And I didn't even know anything about your previous experiences, career. Before Health Assured, all I knew was that you were a mental health champion, advocate. You were so keen to come in and work on our enhanced clinical services, from critical incidents to wellbeing workshops, and ensure that so many people got access to the right support for their workplace, their organisation, for the individuals in crisis. I mean, the CISM stuff is just phenomenal. It's still something that 6 years on here for me, I'm like, wow, I still can't believe we do that. Yeah. It's incredible, and I can't believe the things that we experience, we see and witness as part of being able to coordinate that. So yeah, I mean, I had no idea about your experience. Prior to this, I just knew that you were essentially the missing part in the team for a long time that we'd been trying to fill the gap on, and everyone speaks incredibly highly of you. And then one day, chatting with your manager, Heidi, shout out to Heidi, she'll love that as well. Going, gosh, I've got all these, podcasts, and need to get some guests to join me. And there's one on sports and mental health. Now, I've done one on physical health and mental health, and it touched on sports there, but I don't want to duplicate that and rinse and repeat the actual physical well-being. I don't want to talk about playing sports and the physical impact that can have on your mental health and things like that. And then she went, Gideon's ex-footballer. And I said, right, really? And then it all kind of went from there, and I was like, oh my goodness, but you're so humble. And you're so, like, I would not... feeds into one of the, the things that I've got on here around stigmas and stereotypes, and that's on me, And I think, I wouldn't look at Gideon and think, football is, you think glitz and glamour and all of that. But again, that is, if I'm thinking that, how many other people are thinking that? And then we met, and you taught me through your story, and this will resonate so much with so many people. they may not have been through the exact journey that you've been through, but similar journeys. And it doesn't necessarily need to have been in the sporting world and professional athletes. It could be something just similar along those lines of going on one career trajectory and then that stopping unexpectedly. Yep. So why don't you, if you're comfortable to talk a little bit more about, you know, when did life for you begin as football? Like, how old were you when that happened?
So essentially for me, I started quite late actually, and it took my dad to see my talent. So I actually started off playing tennis.
No way.
Yeah, I played tennis for a bit, and I went to Ghana for a few years to do schooling there, kind of get grounded and understand and appreciate where I'm coming from, and kind of have that there with me. So after my dad recognised it, he thought, why not try football? So we came back. When I did come back after 2 years, left at 5, came back at 7.
You were 7?
Yeah.
You say quite late, 7, you're still a baby.
Well, even then I didn't play football yet.
Oh, right, okay,
so for about a year and a half, I was trying to get back into tennis. They said you have to wait a year to get back into it.
Yeah.
So I was at Sports City at the time.
Yeah.
And so I was playing there. And then effectively I started to kick the ball against the wall a lot. And my dad started to see me get really good at it, and he thought, why don't we sign him up for a team? So, behold, I went to Mustin Juniors, played there. Yeah. And scouts would come in, Liverpool would come in, I'd go on trial, went to Bolton, went to United, went to here, went to there. And it was a hard journey even from that age, because I realised that I was being judged straight away on the basis of what I could produce rather than who I was.
Yeah, yeah.
And so as the journey progressed, I started to realise from a young age that, of course, you're more of an asset than a person. And what that did for me was it made me realise that, okay, I cannot be too attached mentally towards what I'm doing. There's being and there's doing, and I had to realise that I am in myself a different person to what I am doing. It's just an extension of who I am, and it's a skill that I've acquired, but it's not all of who I am. But for many people, that's not the idea that they have. I remember I was listening to Jamie Carragher on the Diary of a CEO, and he was just talking about if you lost a game, that was it. His plans would change, everything would change. And for me, it was this similar scenario after games. If I lost a game, I would also go back, try and change things. And that's literally the day of, straight after the game, I'm trying to fix things, and I'm like, the pressure's building now. And as success came, just because of how I am as a person, I'm not used to the bright lights. I'm not used to being center stage. I didn't like it at all. And so I didn't know what to do. I didn't know how to handle it. And so I started to go through periods of just having panic attacks and all sorts. And so I didn't have anyone that could help me in terms of psychologically looking at it. And the pressure was building. And so I would find myself having to build in coping mechanisms. Yeah. And one thing I found really useful was journaling. I would write all the time. And it's led me to continue to write and look at what I've done in the past, reflect on it again, and then go back to it and say, oh, okay, I've learned from it in this way and I've grown from it in that way. Yeah. But the journey wasn't always smooth, never has been. Most football players and people who've played in sports know that it isn't a smooth journey. Yeah. There's a lot of stigma as well that comes with it. Some of the things that you kind of see with the stigmas is such like, oh, if you don't make it, that's it, that's the end of you, or if you don't make it, you're going to end up in Asda, which is an honest job, which pays well, and you just see yourself as a failure. And so one of the things that I realized in my own life was when I hit 18, and after tasting some first team success, training with the 21s at 16, by 17 being with the first team, training with them, being able to sit on a bench behind closed doors against Sunderland, and I thought to myself, okay, I'm right there, I'm almost there. Then you hit 18. But just as you hit 18, you get an injury. And with injury comes questions. Yeah. And people are wondering what's going on. And then from that injury stems, you don't get a contract. And there was only 2 players in that room that didn't get contracts, myself and another player. Everyone else got a contract. And from that day forward, the first thing in my mind was, how are my parents going to react to this? How do they cope with this? Yeah. But then I neglected myself. Yeah. And then when I came back to myself to realize I'm really going through it, and you're going from team to team, trial to trial, I became a bit numb. And I realized that I was mentally spiraling a bit downward in a way whereby I could not recognize myself. I was disinterested in things that I used to be interested in. And I was lucky enough to have friends around me, talk about social support that could uplift me or just be around me and have a conversation with me, chat with me, text and reach out, those sort of things. But I just think those general stigmas that we've seen, the issues in mental health with guys in football is you can't talk about your issues. You have to show as if you're tough. And when you're a defender, as I was, you can't be soft. Anything you do is proven to be soft if you're showing compassion in that kind of regard.
You're a defender.
I was, yeah. So I was. I started off at centre back. Obviously, I didn't have the growth spurt that you see with your Van Dijks. So I ended up becoming a left back.
Okay.
And so that's how I kind of made my way towards first team.
Yeah.
And it was just always just little things. I mean, it's the small things, microaggressions, such as if you wear gloves, then you're soft.
Playing
in the rain.
Really?
Yeah. So it was little things like that.
So unless you're a goalie, you shouldn't be wearing gloves.
Exactly.
What about, I went to watch football on the weekend actually, and I noticed some different, some players will wear long sleeves because it's a little bit colder and stuff. Would that, even just little changes to your whole, your whole get-up kit, gloves, long sleeves, that's frowned upon, well, not frowned upon, but you're judged.
Yeah.
In comments of it.
Yeah. Little comments like that have been made.
You've covered a lot there, and I've scribbled about 67 things down because I want to unpack a couple of them. A lot of this that you experience, you're talking about things like contracts, travelling, all of this before you even turn 18. That they're very adult things, very grown-up things to have to go through. I imagine, when I was 16, I was on £4 an hour working at the local KFC. Being 16, probably talking about a little bit more than £4 an hour in the world that you were living in at that time. They're huge, grown-up, mature, adult discussions, conversations to have. If I know you did a lot of international travel as well. Yeah. Very few people under the age of 18 experience those, and it's not really until you get into your 20s that you start to have, more so those types of conversations and experiences. Did you feel that you had to grow up very quickly and be much older than you were?
100%.
Yeah.
I obviously went to Newcastle, so I left home.
Yeah.
I'm 15. And obviously at that time as well, you're doing your GCSEs.
Yeah.
So I remember sitting on the bus from game to game at Newcastle, trying to study for my GCSEs, whilst thinking I need to get a team here, otherwise my future in football is finished.
Yeah.
And I'll have to lead a whole different life. And what does that mean about my identity?
Yeah.
And my self-worth? And so it just led to a lot of inquisitive thinking, and I began to realize that these conversations are conversations that I didn't think I'd have to have. But because I was having them, it made me realize that, okay, I can have a different perspective on life.
Yeah.
And I've got more time to grow and learn now as well, because it's happened earlier. So I will say one thing, I'm grateful 100% for the journey, because it's made me who I am.
Yeah.
It molded me. But just in terms of what it looked like with regards to those kind of conversations, it helped me to have reflexive thinking, which was to always think about what I'm about to do next or what I've already done. So I would always think going into games, there's going to be a certain way, you have to think a certain way to be successful.
Yeah.
Looking at first team structure and seeing yourself and thinking, I'm a piece of the jigsaw, so how do I make myself fit into that jigsaw? And not just, we're here to just play football. I'm a brand, an image that needs to be developed. So how do I do that?
It's still, they're huge. Huge things to be thinking about at that age as well as juggling your studies, friendship groups, family. You're going through such a transition physically at that age, with puberty and adolescence in general. Things are hard enough as it is when you're just going to school full time and maybe you've got a weekend job, waiting tables or something. Adding in this travel, these decisions, thinking so logically all the time and in such a professional and mature way, that's, that is impressive. Really, really is. when you did that, when you left home, for example, did you leave? So were you on your own? Like, did you have a support network around you, or did the club, at the time, were they like the support when you left?
So when I left from home, I lived in what we call digs. So you tend to live with 2-3 players.
Yeah.
I was fortunate enough where at times we'd live with 4 players. And it was lovely, it was loud, it was fun.
Yeah.
You had people that you could, have a good time with.
Yeah.
Obviously, there's the things like making sure you maintain discipline.
Of course, yeah.
Which I obviously stick to my time of 9:15.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
Don't bother me. That's me done for the day.
Yeah.
But in terms of support, it was the team. Once in a while, you'd see your family, you'd go home on weekends.
Yeah.
Luckily, Newcastle would pay for the tickets to get home as well on the train.
Yeah.
But in terms of just having that kind of support, there wasn't anything like a psychologist that you could see.
Yeah.
So it was just find a way to cope with it, speak to the right people. And as a kid, you're scared to talk to your manager because you're thinking, I need to get picked for games.
Yeah, don't want to look weak.
I don't want to look weak.
Yeah.
So how do I put on a face and just muscle my way through it and get game time done and try and work towards my future?
Do you find it easier now as an adult, away from that world, I guess, civilian life now? These... sorry about this.
Oh, no, it's fine.
Sorry. Can't control them. So do you feel now as an adult, so you're in your 20s, aren't you? Yeah. What was my train of thought? Those ambulances sidetracked me now. Do you feel more comfortable being vulnerable and authentic? Not saying you weren't authentic. You were authentic when you were younger, authentically trying to prove yourself to be, worthy of the contracts, worthy to be picked for games, or have you found it difficult transitioning into adulthood now and being vulnerable, being a new way of like authentic?
In terms of vulnerability, it was hard in the beginning.
Yeah.
Just because I'm trying to make sure my family don't have the brunt of it.
Yeah.
And no one else kind of sees it. So there were many days I would obviously cry in the background in my own room after training sessions and matches if I didn't perform well. And in terms of vulnerability, what really helped me was when my dad spoke to me. It was after Newcastle had let me go, and he said to me, "Are you all right?" I said, "Yeah." And I knew I was lying to him. And then he looked at me in the eyes and said, "Are you all right?" And I remember I broke down in tears, and I was just wailing, and my sister was trying to give me a cuddle, and my dad was like, "Just leave him to have his time."
Yeah.
And then let him cry out and it'd be fine. But the vulnerability came when I went to uni.
Yeah.
And I got into field psychology as my first degree, and I went to play for UCF, so Central Florida, University of Central Florida. That's when I transitioned from trying to stay professional and go towards looking at a different avenue. Okay, I've noticed that in football, if you don't make it, that's it. You don't have anything else to fall back on, essentially. Why not better my life, better myself, and give back where I can? So whilst playing football, I also worked as a community service officer as well. And we also helped in the wake of George Floyd's death to co-found a organization, REAG. So it was the Racial Equity, I can't remember what A stands for, but action group, that was it, action group. And so it just led us to have conversations with teams, managers who even cried sometimes when we discussed some of the differences we have when it comes to being the minority group and some of the things we face. And it really just brought the picture together for everyone to see. And that's what I'm hoping I can do in the future for people. So I'm hoping this inspires someone out there. If it's just one life, it changes. Then that means I've changed a generation, because change a person, change a family, change a generation.
I just got goosebumps, Gideon. Gosh, it was so inspirational. I'm teared up. What was I going to say? No, that was, I think that is what I wanted, really, for people to listen to this. We're not here to say, your roller coaster of of a career and your experience and all those changes. Yes, we've touched on that, but what has come out of that is you've turned those experiences, those challenges, that adversity into something that serves you personally. And that doesn't mean you're like selfish by any means, but you've gone through a lot of time of doing things for other people, and to be the commodity of as a football player. You've done something for yourself, and also putting back out there that good into the world and helping those individuals. Whilst this is an episode about sports and mental health, this could be a really similar story for people that have been in the performing arts, dancers, musicians, actors, actresses. The part of it, I mean, it even flashed in my head then, military personnel. You know, one thing can go wrong early on in your military career, and that's it, discharged. You can never serve again. And lots of individuals that go on to do that choose that vocation in life, I wanted it from 6, 7, 8 years of age. I want to be a soldier. I want to be a pilot. But we see it all, usually when it's high profile and quite negative drama and stories in the media of when those vocations, those career pathways of bright lights, glitz and glamour, or whatever it might be, but someone that's invested a lot of time, effort, potentially money, a lot of their life planning to be something goes wrong. They mess up publicly, or perceived as messing up publicly, and then everything is just focused on their downfall. And it's very rare that you see anything reported on, or a spotlight being put on people that have moved away from an extensive career in one field and just continue to grow and flourish in a new one, and it's serving the world better, serving their community, themselves, and it's doing good and going from strength to strength, whereas a lot of individuals out there will reach their peak, something happens, they come out of that career pathway and can never come back from it. They just think their life is over, there's no coming back. This is all I was meant to be in this world: singer, footballer, athlete, swimmer, dancer, and that's it. They can't see beyond that. But when you referred to being a beacon at the start, I think you could really set the scene for a new generation of individuals that haven't achieved what they thought they might, end goal, or they've achieved it and then it has come to an end, and then looked for the new opportunities. I think you should be really proud of that journey that you've been on. There's like a little monologue there from me, but I think it's really important to address that. And I think you're one of probably many individuals that has gone through this journey as well of just positive growth from adversity and challenge, but it just never gets talked about because it's not sensational, it's not salacious, there's no drama to it, because it's good, because the things that you're doing are good things. There isn't drama and negative connotations around, someone hitting a downward spiral, returning to drink, or, things like that. That's what the media put their spotlight on, isn't it, at the end of the day? I've watched, look at all these, gone in all sorts of different directions here. I wrote down royal figures, and I'm not sure why I've put that. Probably thinking about, when you talked about being an asset versus being a person, and then I referred it to the commodity as well. Like that's your product when you were in the footballing world, and it's a number and not necessarily perceived as being valued as an individual. It made me think of, the royal family, royal individuals. I think that's something similar. You give up your life to be that public figure and things. I think that's why I wrote it. In terms of just some other bits and pieces that we touched on this the other day when we caught up, and we could do whole episodes on here. But we talked about microaggressions just before, and how some of those things can come across and just stick with you, like wearing gloves in the rain and things. And actually, you're just protecting your physical health there, you know, comfort, so you can focus on the task in hand, which is playing a game very well. But I want to touch on toxic masculinity. We mentioned this the other day. I mean, we kind of talked about it. Maybe polarization with approaches. You know, what kind of thoughts do you have around that in the sporting world? It doesn't necessarily have to be football. That, I guess that's where a lot of your experience comes from.
So with toxic masculinity, I think it's one of those things that you see across the board.
Yeah.
In my eyes, whereby the idea is not only just in sports, but it stems from sometimes family as well.
Yeah.
But you tend to see this ideology of, okay, rough and tough.
Yeah.
And you have to not speak out. And because you're not speaking out, all you've got left is just anger that has not been resolved. And so then you've got people acting a certain way and doing things that do not benefit the group as a whole, nor society as a whole. And I think, to be specific, some of those things that you look at is the kind of behaviours you see with footballers, and just the idea of entitlement to everything and anything. And I think that's one whereby you have to kind of just address what is possible for people to do and have, because I think they get lost in the world of, you know, the world's I think is it shell or whatever it is? Oyster. That's it, thank you. And it's like, okay, if the world's your oyster, then what about the rest of us? Yeah. And then you see the silent suffering, and it reminds me of, you know, when a tree falls to the ground, and the whole idea of, if it's in a forest and no one's there, do you hear it? Yeah. But then there's the other side that people don't look at. What if all the trees now fall in the forest? There's no forest left. And all you will see is the effect of it from afar. And so I think what I'm trying to say is that when one has fallen and it's not addressed, and people continue to keep falling in that same pattern, then all we will see is the domino effect of it later on, when it's too late to make an impact. And so for me, it's a matter of having in sports a measure whereby people can feel as though they can express themselves, feel as though they can talk to someone if they're going through a hard time. I don't know how many sporting teams have a psychologist or support in place in that regard, but it's definitely something that needs to be done, because from the ages of, 14, 15, 16 onwards to 18, you're trying to find yourself. Yeah. You're trying to figure out, oh, who likes me, who doesn't like me, what am I, what do I want to do, where do I want to be? And I think that's something that needs to be addressed as well.
The formative years at the end of the day, aren't they? They really are. Well, in fact, your formative years are up until your early 20s. So your brain, your cognitive ability and maturity is still developing there as well. And to be thrust into such a mature and grown-up world, that's a lot, because you want to live up to your peers that are more experienced on the team and the icons that you look up to. And, you know, I can just imagine, you know, little kids going, right, I'm the same as this person. Like, I want to be David Beckham when I grow up, and, you know, I want, and then you're in that world with people like, you know, the Beckhams to be and so on. You're like, oh, well, I want to match up to that. And that's a lot to, like I mentioned before, it's tough enough being a teenager without those additional pressures as well. Yeah. And, you know, I've done a little bit of research into kind of the well-being side of things with football teams and just sporting worlds, and it's so varied. There's not necessarily one blanket approach, and I guess that all comes down to sport being a commodity in itself. There's all these different businesses within things, privately owned, depending on how much funding there is and backing there is behind teams, clubs, associations and things like that. It's all varied. There's no one requirement for that kind of support. And, you know, we may see that change over time. I know there's lots and lots more coming out where there is a team psychologist or an academy psychologist, but it's not everyone has access to that or the funding behind things. Yeah. We've covered a lot of ground here. Is there anything else that you are... I put on here, we've kind of discuss this about the mentality of what could have been, thinking about what could have been, not dwelling too much on the opportunity that is taken away from you, rather than thinking about the new opportunities that can come to you as a result. We've touched on that a little bit, and I think you are a fine example of that, you know, going from what your core career was to then going over and studying and still play. So you studied and played at the same time.
Yeah.
You see, you're getting a balance. You're doing something for you whilst still having a career there. You're setting the foundations for your future there. And I think you probably didn't even realise, you may not have realised at the time, but you were already looking at what the new opportunities were for you that were coming out of the shift in thing, you know, that you might have been struggling with the injury and after that. I think it's a fantastic, inspiring story. And I really, really appreciate you sharing it, especially on something so public as well. Do you feel okay?
Yeah, fine. Like I say, just a little bit to add to that, I think it's important to share these stories because they're, like you said, they're not glamorous.
Yeah.
Well, that's the story of most people.
Yeah.
And so it should be that they can look at it and go, oh, okay, I'm not alone in this.
Yeah.
And that's what it's about. There's a difference between alone and lonely.
Yeah,
and I think for many of us, we are alone. We're not lonely. We have people around us. We may not recognize it at times, but sometimes we do.
Yeah.
But that support doesn't feel right for us. And that's why, again, you know, we're here as well.
Yeah.
Health Assured, we've got great counsellors. We've got great teams that are there to support. So, I mean, helpline numbers are there if they need it.
Done my job for me, thank you, Gideon.
You're welcome.
Do the little plug for Health Assured, yeah? No, but it's absolutely right. You know, we do support some sporting clubs as well. And those individuals may not even realise that they've got the access to, you know, the assistance programmes and the helplines. And so if you are listening, double check, you know, with the club, with the academy, see if there is ourselves in place to support. I think you are a credit to your family. I think you really are, you know, this, and they are clearly a credit to you as well. That is a very reciprocal relationship there, and you got through all these different life experiences together as a unit, and it seemed that you were very fortunate to have one another, and that's beautiful. That really is. You are an absolute credit. I mean, I know I waxed lyrical at the beginning, but you're a credit to Health Assured, to our teams, and your vested personal interest in well-being, psychological well-being as a whole, will serve you well for the rest of your working career and beyond. And you know, that's as a specialist support coordinator, or who knows what you will develop to go on to. But you've done a lot of good already, and I think you'll continue to do so. It's been a pleasure to have you speak with me today.
Thank you for having me.